Please, don't hurt me, she murmured, and the human's heart shattered. The gunfire had stopped 3 minutes ago, but Ryan Carter's hands still shook as he cleared the corridor. Blood streaked the metallic walls of the abandoned research station, some of it his own. The distress beacon had promised survivors. What he'd found instead were bodies and the unmistakable signs of a massacre. His combat scanner picked up movement in the next chamber. Ryan raised his plasma rifle, finger hovering over the trigger. The door hissed open to reveal a scene that made his stomach turn. Cages, dozens of them, stacked floor to ceiling like some grotesque warehouse. Most stood empty, their locks blown open from the inside. But one remained sealed. Inside crouched a figure barely 4 feet tall. Her skin shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed erratically. Fear made visible. 2 large eyes, impossibly dark and reflective, tracked his every movement. She wore the tattered remains of what might have been clothing, now stained with substances Ryan didn't want to identify. He lowered his weapon slowly, trying to project calm. The translator chip in his ear clicked to life as she made a sound, high-pitched and trembling. Please, don't hurt me. The words hit Ryan harder than any bullet he'd taken today. This wasn't a survivor of the attack. This was what they'd been attacking to free. Or perhaps, what they'd been attacking to silence. The research station belonged to the Vaxian Consortium, a corporation that officially dealt in xenobiology. Unofficially, Ryan had heard rumors, dark ones. He holstered his rifle completely and raised both hands. The universal gesture of peace, he hoped. Her luminescent patterns flickered uncertainty, shifting from panic red to cautious amber. I'm not going to hurt you, Ryan said, keeping his voice level. I'm here to help. Her head tilted, processing his words. The translator worked both ways, but trust didn't translate so easily. She'd clearly learned that the hard way. Scars marked her limbs, some fresh, others old. Medical scars. Precise, deliberate. My name is Ryan Carter. I'm with the Human Coalition Naval Forces. We received a distress signal from this station. He took a careful step forward. She pressed herself against the back of the cage, her patterns blazing crimson. Ryan stopped immediately. What's your name? She stared at him for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice carried layers of meaning the translator struggled to convey. Subject, 17. Then, quieter, they called me Kira. Before what? Ryan wanted to ask, but he already knew. Before they'd stripped her of personhood, before they'd reduced her to a number, before whatever horrors had been inflicted in the name of research, a sound echoed from deeper in the station. Footsteps, multiple sets, moving with military precision. Ryan's tactical display lit up with hostile markers. The Vaxian security forces were regrouping, and they were coming this way. Kira heard them too. Her patterns strobed panic white, and she made herself even smaller. They're coming back. They always come back. Ryan's jaw tightened. Not this time. He pulled his plasma cutter from his belt and aimed it at the cage lock. Kira flinched violently, and Ryan realized his mistake. To her, any tool pointed in her direction was a weapon. Every hand that reached for her had brought pain. I'm breaking the lock, he explained, moving deliberately slow. Getting you out. Then, we run. Why? Ryan met her eyes, those dark mirrors that had witnessed too much cruelty. Because it's the right thing to do. Because you asked me not to hurt you. And I never want to be the reason someone has to say those words. The footsteps were getting closer. Ryan activated the cutter, the lock melted under the concentrated beam, and the cage door swung open. Kira remained frozen. Freedom terrifying after so long in captivity. Ryan extended his hand, palm up. I promise you, Kira, I will get you out of here, or I'll die trying. She looked at his hand like it was a foreign concept. Then, with a trembling movement that spoke of desperate hope, she reached out and took it. The moment her small fingers wrapped around his, Ryan Carter made a silent vow. Whatever it took, whoever he had to fight, this would not stand. Not while he still breathed. The security forces burst through the far door, weapons raised and charging. Ryan pulled Kira behind him, his rifle snapping up with practiced ease. His first shot took down the lead soldier before they could fire. The second caught the tactical shield of another. "Move," he barked, and Kira moved. They ran through the blood-soaked corridors, Ryan's combat experience warring against overwhelming odds. His scanner showed 15 hostiles between them and the docking bay, where his ship waited. Behind them, the security forces coordinated their pursuit with cold efficiency. These weren't scientists defending their research. These were trained killers protecting a secret. Kira stumbled, her legs weak from confinement. Without thinking, Ryan scooped her up and kept running. She weighed almost nothing. Her frame diminished by malnutrition. Her bioluminescent patterns flashed against his armor, casting strange shadows on the walls. "Left corridor," his tactical system advised. Ryan ignored it. The left corridor led to a choke point, where they'd be massacred. Instead, he kicked open a maintenance hatch and dove inside. Kira clutched tight against his chest. The narrow tunnel reeked of recycled air and chemical cleaners. Ryan's armor scraped against the walls as he crawled forward, one arm holding Kira, the other dragging them both through the claustrophobic space. Behind them, shouts echoed as the security forces searched. "You're insane," Kira whispered, her patterns dim in the darkness. "They'll kill you for this. The consortium doesn't forgive." Ryan's laugh was harsh. "Let them try." They emerged into a storage bay stacked with supply crates. Ryan's heads-up display showed the docking bay was 2 levels up and 3 sections over. His ship, the small but deadly Corvette Defiance, waited with engines warm. His AI co-pilot, Griffin, would have detected the firefight by now and prepped for emergency departure. A plasma bolt seared past Ryan's head, missing by inches. The security forces had found them. Ryan returned fire while backing toward the exit, his shots precise despite the chaos. 1, hostile down. 2, 3. But more kept coming. Kira's eyes widened as she watched him fight. She'd seen violence before. Plenty of it. But this was different. Ryan wasn't attacking. He was defending. Every shot he took was to protect, not to harm for harm's sake. The distinction mattered. They reached a cargo elevator. Ryan slammed the activation panel, and the platform lurched upward. Hostile fire pinged off the rising floor, sparks flying. Kira buried her face against Ryan's armor, her entire body trembling. "Almost there," Ryan said, more to himself than to her. "Just hold on." The elevator reached the docking level. The doors opened to reveal a nightmare. A full tactical squad waited, weapons trained on the elevator. At their center stood a Vaxian in a pristine white coat, his expression one of mild annoyance rather than concern. "Mr. Carter," the Vaxian said smoothly, his translator rendering his words with clinical precision. "You're making a significant mistake. That specimen represents years of valuable research. Return it, and we can discuss compensation for your time." "Her name is Kira," Ryan growled. "And she's not an it." The Vaxian's expression didn't change. "Semantics. The creature is property of the consortium. Your interference constitutes theft of corporate assets. The penalty for which, I'm sure you're aware, is death." Ryan's grip tightened on his rifle. He was outnumbered, outgunned, and out of time. His mind raced through tactical options, each one ending in failure. Behind him, the elevator shaft offered no escape. Before him, a firing squad waited for the order. Kira shifted in his arms. Her patterns had changed from fear-white to something else. Something that looked almost like resolve. She whispered something too soft for the translator to catch, then did something Ryan didn't expect. She began to sing. The sound started low, a vibration more felt than heard. Then it grew, rising in pitch and complexity. The bioluminescent patterns on her skin synchronized with the melody, creating a hypnotic display of light and sound. The tactical squad faltered, their weapons dipping slightly as confusion spread through their ranks. Ryan didn't waste the opportunity. He fired 3 shots in rapid succession, taking out the soldiers on the flanks. Then he ran, sprinting across the docking bay toward his ship, with Kira still singing that strange, compelling song. The remaining soldiers tried to aim, but their movements were sluggish, their coordination disrupted by whatever Kira was doing. The Vaxian scientist screamed orders, his clinical composure finally cracking. "Kill them both. I don't care about the specimen anymore. Kill them." Ryan's ship loomed ahead, the boarding ramp already descending thanks to Griffin's quick thinking. Plasma fire erupted around them, the security forces shaking off Kira's influence through sheer discipline. A bolt caught Ryan's shoulder, spinning him around. He grunted but kept moving, his armor absorbing most of the impact. They reached the ramp. Ryan practically threw himself inside, Kira still clutched against him. The ramp sealed behind them as more fire impacted the hull. "Griffin, get us out of here now," Ryan shouted. "Already ahead of you," the AI responded, its voice calm despite the chaos. Docking clamps released. Engines to full. Brace for emergency departure. The Defiance lurched forward, tearing free from the station's docking port with a screech of protesting metal. External cameras showed the Vaxian security forces scrambling for their own ships. But Ryan's Corvette was built for speed. Within seconds, they'd put enough distance to engage the jump drive. Kira's song faded as exhaustion overtook her. Her patterns dimmed to barely visible flickers. Ryan carefully set her down on the co-pilot's seat, his own injuries making the movement clumsy. Blood seeped through the crack in his shoulder armor, but he'd survived worse. She looked up at him, those dark eyes unreadable. "You came back," she said quietly. "In the cage? When you left to check the corridor? I thought you'd leave me." "They all leave eventually." Ryan knelt, so they were eye level. "I gave you my word, Kira. I meant it." "Incoming transmission," Griffin interrupted. "Vaxian Consortium. They're demanding we return and threatening legal action through the Galactic Council. Tell them to file a complaint," Ryan said. "And tell them that if they ever conduct experiments like this again, I'll personally make sure the whole galaxy knows what they're doing." The AI paused. "That's going to make us a lot of enemies." Ryan looked at Kira, at the scars that mapped her suffering, at the way she still flinched when he moved too quickly. "Then we'll deal with enemies. Set course for Coalition space. Maximum speed." As the Defiance jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving the research station and its horrors behind, Kira's patterns slowly shifted to a color Ryan hadn't seen before, a soft, tentative blue. His translator identified it as hope, though the word felt inadequate for the complex emotion it represented. She reached out and touched his hand again, her small fingers barely wrapping around 2 of his. "Thank you," she said. The words simple, but heavy with meaning. Ryan squeezed gently. "You're safe now, I promise." But even as he said it, he knew the truth. The Vaxian Consortium wouldn't let this go. They'd come for her, for him, with everything they had. He'd just made himself and his ship a target for one of the most powerful corporations in known space. Looking at Kira's hopeful expression, Ryan found he didn't care. Some lines couldn't be uncrossed, some evils couldn't be tolerated, and some promises were worth dying to keep. The journey to Coalition space would take 3 days. 3 days to figure out what came next. 3 days for Kira to begin healing from traumas he could only imagine. 3 days before the storm that was surely coming caught up with them. Ryan headed to the medical bay, gesturing for Kira to follow. She did, hesitantly, her movements still those of someone expecting punishment at any moment. He pulled out the basic medical supplies, then paused. "I need to treat your wounds," he said carefully. "And mine. Is that okay?" The fact that he asked, that he waited for permission, seemed to surprise her more than anything else that had happened. She nodded slowly, as Ryan cleaned and bandaged her injuries, cataloging the systematic abuse she'd endured. His resolve hardened into something unbreakable. This wasn't just about one rescued victim. This was about a system that allowed such suffering. A galaxy that looked away from inconvenient horrors because they were profitable. Griffin's voice interrupted his dark thoughts. Ryan, I've been analyzing the station's databases. I managed to download some files before we departed. You need to see this. What is it? Evidence. Lots of it. The Vaxian Consortium has been conducting these experiments on dozens of species. Kira isn't the only one. There are facilities like that station throughout the outer sectors. Ryan's hands clenched into fists. How many? At least 30 that I can confirm, possibly more. Kira had gone very still, listening to this exchange. When she spoke, her voice was hollow. My family. My people. Are they? Ryan met her eyes, wishing he had better news. I don't know. But I'm going to find out. And if they're still alive, I'm going to get them back. It was a promise he had no right to make. One man against a galactic corporation. The odds were impossible. The danger was absolute. Success was unlikely at best. But as he looked at Kira, at the fragile hope rekindling in her expression, Ryan knew he'd see it through or die trying. Because that's what humans did. When faced with evil, when confronted with injustice, they didn't calculate odds or weigh risks. They fought back. The Vaxian Consortium had made a critical mistake. They'd assumed cruelty could exist in the shadows indefinitely. They'd forgotten that sometimes, all it took was one person to say enough. One person to hear a desperate plea and choose action over apathy. Please, don't hurt me, she'd said, and Ryan Carter's heart had shattered at those words, then reformed into something harder, something determined, something dangerous to anyone who'd make another living being beg for mercy. The war had just begun. But for the first time in her captivity, Kira wasn't alone. And the consortium was about to learn what happened when you made an enemy of humanity. The Defiance raced through the void, carrying two souls bound by a simple promise. Behind them, the machinery of corporate vengeance began to turn. Ahead, an uncertain future waited. But in that moment, surrounded by the quiet hum of the ship's engines, something remarkable happened. Kira smiled. It was small, tentative, and fragile as glass. But it was real. And for Ryan, that made every impossible fight to come absolutely worth it. The medical bay's lights cast soft shadows as Ryan finished bandaging Kira's wounds. She watched him work with a mixture of confusion and cautious trust. Every movement he made was telegraphed, every touch gentle. It was so different from what she'd known that her mind struggled to process it. You should rest, Ryan said, gesturing to the medical bed. It's not much, but it's clean and safe. Kira hesitated. What if they find us? Then I'll fight them off, Ryan replied simply. That's my job now, keeping you safe. She settled onto the bed, her luminescent patterns dimming as exhaustion finally claimed her. Within moments, she was asleep. Her small form curled defensively, even in slumber. Ryan watched her for a long moment, his expression grim. Griffin, he called softly. Pull up everything you've got on the consortium's operations. I want names, locations, and evidence. Lots of evidence. Planning something inadvisable? The AI asked, though its tone suggested approval. Planning something necessary, Ryan corrected. If there are more facilities like that station, more prisoners like Kira, then we're going to expose all of it. Every dirty secret. Every violated law. Everything. That will require resources we don't have. Allies we don't possess. And it will definitely get us killed. Ryan's smile was cold. Then we'd better get started. Send a message to Commander Hayes at Coalition Naval Intelligence. Secure channel. Tell her I've got something that's going to turn the entire outer sector upside down. The next 3 days passed in a blur of planning and recovery. Kira slowly emerged from her shell, her natural curiosity beginning to overcome years of conditioned fear. She asked questions about everything. The ship, the stars. What humans ate. Why Ryan's species only had 2 eyes instead of the sensible 4 her people possessed. Ryan answered each question patiently, grateful to see signs of the person she'd been before captivity. Her bioluminescent patterns grew more vibrant, cycling through colors that indicated emotions ranging from curiosity green to contentment purple. The translator helped, but Ryan found himself learning to read her moods directly from the light displays. On the second day, Kira ventured out of the medical bay to explore the small ship. She moved like a ghost, barely making sound, always watching for threats that no longer existed. When she discovered the observation deck with its panoramic view of the stars, she stood transfixed for nearly an hour. I forgot they were beautiful, she whispered. In the cage, I couldn't see them. I forgot what freedom looked like. Ryan joined her at the window, keeping a respectful distance. What's your homeworld like? Kira's patterns shifted to nostalgic amber. Green. Everything green. Forests that sing when the wind moves through them. My people. We lived in harmony with the trees. We were part of the symphony. Were? Ryan caught the past tense. The consortium came 20 cycles ago. They said they wanted to study us, learn about our bioluminescence. They promised medicine, technology, prosperity. Her patterns darkened to grief gray. They lied. They took the ones who could sing the best, the ones whose light was brightest. They took us away, and we never came home. They took us away. They took us away. They took us away. How many? Ryan asked quietly. She was silent for a long moment. 200 of us, at first. I don't know how many are left. In the station where you found me, I was the last. The others, they either died from the experiments or they stopped responding. When you stop responding, they dispose of you. Ryan's hands clenched. That's not going to happen to the others. We're going to find them. Kira looked at him skeptically. You're one human. The consortium is everywhere. Then we'll make noise. Lots of it. Loud enough that the galaxy has to listen. That evening, Commander Patricia Hayes responded to Ryan's message. Her face appeared on the communication screen. Her expression professionally neutral, but her eyes sharp with intelligence. Carter, you'd better have a damn good reason for breaking radio silence. You're technically AWOL after that unsanctioned rescue mission last month. This is bigger than that, Ryan said. He transmitted the files Griffin had recovered. Commander, the Vaxian Consortium has been conducting illegal experiments on sentient species throughout the outer sectors. Torture, medical experimentation without consent, murder. I've got proof of at least 30 facilities. Hayes reviewed the data, her expression growing darker with each file. Sweet mother of stars. If this is accurate, this is the biggest scandal to hit the Council in decades. It's accurate, Ryan confirmed. I pulled one survivor out personally. There are more out there. Hundreds, maybe thousands. And the consortium will kill anyone who tries to expose them. The commander was silent for a long moment. What are you asking for, Carter? Help. Resources. A task force. Something. These people need rescue. And the consortium needs to answer for what they've done. Hayes rubbed her temples. You're asking me to authorize military action against a corporation that technically hasn't broken any laws within coalition space. The Council will fight this. The trade commissions will fight this. Hell, half our own admirals will fight this because they've got consortium connections. Then we fight them too, Ryan said flatly. Commander, I know what I'm asking. I know the politics involved. But I also know what I saw in that station. I know what they did to Kira and hundreds of others. If we don't act, who will? Hayes studied him through the screen. You've changed, Carter. You used to be by the book. What happened? Ryan glanced toward the medical bay where Kira was sleeping. I met someone who begged me not to hurt her. Someone who'd been hurt so much that simple kindness was incomprehensible. That changes a person. The commander nodded slowly. All right. I'll take this to Intelligence Command. But Carter, you need to understand. Even if they agree to act, it'll take time. Weeks, maybe months, to build a case and get authorization. Those prisoners don't have months, Ryan argued. Every day we wait, more of them die. I know, Hayes said, and for the first time, her professional mask cracked, showing genuine pain. But I can't send troops without authorization. Not against the consortium. What I can do is give you access to some resources, quietly, unofficially. If you were to, say, conduct reconnaissance on these facilities and gather more evidence, well, that's just an enthusiastic naval officer doing thorough research. Ryan understood immediately. You're giving me permission to go after them. I'm giving you rope to hang yourself with, Hayes corrected. But if anyone can pull this off, it's you. I'll forward coordinates for a supply depot in the Kepler belt. Stock up, be smart. And Carter, try not to start a war. No promises, Ryan said. The transmission ended. Ryan turned to find Kira standing in the doorway, her patterns swirling with complex emotions he couldn't quite identify. You're really going to do this, she said. Risk everything for people you've never met. Ryan shrugged. It's the right thing to do. Most people don't do the right thing when it's dangerous. Then most people need to do better, Ryan replied simply. Kira approached him cautiously. I want to help. I know the facilities. I know how they operate. I can be useful. Ryan shook his head. You've been through enough. You don't need to put yourself through more. Her patterns flashed angry red. Don't decide what I need. I'm not broken. I'm not helpless. I survived. And I'll use that survival to make sure no one else has to endure what I did. There was steel in her voice that Ryan hadn't heard before. He recognized it because he felt it too. The determination of someone who'd seen too much darkness and refused to let it win. All right, he said finally. But we do this smart. We train you. Teach you how to defend yourself. How to survive combat situations. And if things go wrong, if it gets too dangerous, you pull back. Deal? Kira's patterns shifted to determined orange. Deal. The next 2 weeks were intensive. Ryan reached the supply depot and loaded the Defiance with everything they'd need. Weapons, medical supplies, surveillance equipment, and enough ammunition to fight a small war. While he prepped the ship, he trained Kira. She was a quick learner, her natural agility translating well to combat movement. Ryan taught her basic self-defense, how to use a stunner. And, most importantly, how to recognize and escape dangerous situations. She absorbed it all with fierce concentration, transforming her trauma into purposeful skill. Griffin analyzed the consortium's facility network, identifying patterns and vulnerabilities. The AI's strategic projections were grim, but not impossible. With the right approach, they could hit multiple facilities, extract prisoners, and gather evidence before the consortium could respond effectively. Their first target was a research station on Titan Prime, orbiting a gas giant in an isolated system. According to Griffin's data, it held approximately 40 prisoners from at least 7 different species. The security was moderate, designed more to keep prisoners in than attackers out. Ryan and Kira studied the facility layout obsessively. They ran simulations, planned contingencies, and prepared for everything that could go wrong. On the eve of their assault, Ryan found Kira on the observation deck again, staring at the stars. Nervous? He asked. Her patterns flickered uncertainty yellow. Terrified. But also, she paused, searching for the word, ready. For so long, I was helpless. Tomorrow, I get to fight back. Ryan sat beside her, close enough to show companionship, but far enough to respect her space. We're going to get them out. All of them. And if we can't? Kira asked quietly. If we fail? Then we try again, Ryan said firmly. And again. and again, until either we succeed or there's nothing left of me to try with. Kira studied him with those dark, reflective eyes. Why do you care so much? These aren't your people. This isn't your fight. Ryan was quiet for a moment, organizing his thoughts. When I was a kid, my father told me something I've never forgotten. He said that the true measure of a person isn't what they do when it's easy. It's what they do when it's hard. When helping someone costs you everything and walking away costs you nothing. That's when character shows. He met her gaze. You asked me not to hurt you, Kira. Those words, that plea, they showed me what the galaxy had become. A place where innocence had to beg for basic mercy. I can't unhear that. I can't go back to pretending I don't know what's happening in these facilities. So, I have to act. Not because it's easy, or safe, or smart, but because it's right. Kira's patterns shifted through several colors rapidly. Emotions too complex for easy translation. Finally, she reached out and took his hand, holding it between both of hers. My people have a saying. The forest protects those who protect the forest. You've become part of my forest, Ryan Carter. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Ryan squeezed her hand gently. Together, they sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars, two unlikely allies preparing for an impossible war. Behind them, the Defiance hummed with readiness, its weapons loaded and systems primed. Ahead, Titan Prime waited, unaware that its darkest secrets were about to be dragged into the light. The assault would begin in 12 hours. Success would save lives but paint targets on their backs forever. Failure would mean death or worse for both of them. The odds weren't in their favor. The risk was astronomical. But as Ryan felt Kira's small hand in his, felt the determination radiating from her bioluminescent patterns, he knew they'd already won the only battle that truly mattered. They'd refused to be bystanders. They'd chosen action over apathy. And sometimes, that choice alone was enough to change everything. The Defiance dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Titan Prime system. The gas giant dominated the viewport, its swirling storms casting eerie light across its many moons. On the third moon, barely visible against the planet's massive bulk, the consortium facility waited. Griffin, status report, Ryan commanded, his voice crisp with mission focus. Station scanners are active, but not targeting us yet. Current signature reads as a merchant vessel. Thanks to our modifications. Security forces number approximately 20 guards, all Vaxian military contractors. The prison block is on the lower level, separated from main operations. Kira studied the tactical display, her patterns cycling through analytical blue. The ventilation system here. She pointed to a section of the facility schematic. It connects directly to the prison level. If we can access it from outside, we can bypass most of the security checkpoints. Ryan nodded approvingly. Good eye. Griffin, can we land near that access point without triggering alarms? There's a cargo landing pad on the facility's north side. It's used for supply deliveries. If we transmit the right authorization codes, we can dock there legitimately. And you have those codes? Ryan asked. I may have acquired them from the consortium's shipping database, the AI said innocently. Purely for research purposes, of course. Of course, Ryan agreed with a slight smile. All right. We go in as a supply ship. Once we're docked, Kira and I access the ventilation system and make our way to the prison level. We extract the prisoners, gather whatever evidence we can, and get out before they realize what's happening. Kira checked her equipment one final time. The stunner Ryan had given her sat comfortably in her hand, sized for her smaller frame. She'd practiced with it endlessly over the past weeks, her aim now precise and confident. What about the guards? Non-lethal if possible, Ryan said. But Kira, if it's between their lives and yours, you protect yourself. Understood? She nodded, her patterns firm and determined. The Defiance approached the facility, transmitting the stolen codes. For a tense moment, They waited for the response. Then, the docking bay doors opened, granting them access. Ryan guided the ship in smoothly, settling it onto the landing pad with practiced ease. "Welcome to Titan Prime Research Station," a bored-sounding voice transmitted. "Cargo manifest shows medical supplies and food rations. Proceed to Unloading Bay 3 for inspection." "Acknowledged," Ryan replied, affecting a casual merchant's tone. "Griffin, you've got the ship. If things go wrong, you get out of here. Don't wait for us." "I'm an AI," Griffin responded dryly. "I don't abandon people. It's literally against my programming." Ryan smiled despite the tension. "Then make sure things don't go wrong." He and Kira exited through the cargo bay, moving with purpose, but not urgency. They wore nondescript utility suits that could pass for cargo haulers. Kira had wrapped concealing fabric around herself, hiding her distinctive bioluminescent patterns. To casual observers, they looked like any other delivery crew. The facility's interior was sterile and cold, all hard angles and harsh lighting. It reminded Ryan too much of the station where he'd found Kira, the same corporate efficiency that prioritized function over humanity, or in this case, over basic decency toward any sentient life. They reached the ventilation access without incident. Ryan pried open the panel, while Kira kept watch. The shaft beyond was cramped, but navigable. They climbed inside, sealing the panel behind them. The ventilation system carried sounds from throughout the facility. Ryan heard guards chatting about sports, scientists discussing test results in clinical terms that made his blood boil, and beneath it all, something that made him freeze, crying. Quiet. Hopeless. Sobbing. From somewhere below, Kira heard it too. Her patterns flashed distressed purple even beneath her coverings. "We need to hurry." They crawled through the narrow shafts, following Griffin's directions through their comm units. The crying grew louder as they descended. Other sounds joined it. Moans of pain, fearful whispers in languages the translator couldn't process. The sounds of suffering that transcended species barriers. Ryan's jaw tightened. Every instinct screamed at him to rush forward, to tear through the facility and free everyone immediately. But that would get them all killed. They had to be smart, calculated, even when every fiber of his being wanted to be anything but. The shaft opened into a maintenance corridor, adjacent to the prison level. Ryan dropped down first, scanning for threats. Clear. He helped Kira down, and they moved toward the heavy security door, separating them from the prisoners. "This is where it gets tricky," Ryan whispered. "That door requires biometric authorization. We can't hack it without triggering alarms." Kira's patterns shifted to thoughtful green. "What if we don't hack it? What if we convince someone to open it for us?" Before Ryan could respond, she'd removed her concealing wraps. Her bioluminescent patterns blazed to life in the dim corridor, cycling through colors in a complex, hypnotic sequence. Then, she began to sing. It was the same song she'd used during their escape from the first station. The sound seemed to bypass the ears entirely, resonating in the chest and skull. Ryan felt its pull, even knowing what it was. For someone unprepared, it would be overwhelming. Footsteps approached from the other side of the door. The biometric lock clicked, and a Vaxian guard stepped through, his expression glazed and confused. Kira's song intensified, and the guard moved like a puppet, walking past them toward the far wall. Ryan caught him as he stumbled, quickly zip-tying his hands and applying a sedative patch. The guard would wake up in a few hours, with a headache and gaps in his memory. Small price to pay for what he'd been party to. They slipped through the open door into the prison level. The sight that greeted them was nightmarishly familiar. Rows of cages, far more than Ryan had hoped for. Inside each, prisoners of various species huddled in fear or despair. Some looked up as Ryan and Kira entered. Others didn't, too broken to hope for rescue. Kira moved to the first cage, her song fading. The prisoner inside, a reptilian being covered in dull scales, stared at her with one functioning eye. The other was covered by crude medical bandaging. We're here to help, Kira said softly. We're getting you out. The reptilian's laugh was bitter. You're prisoners too. Welcome to hell. Ryan began accessing the cage control system, his fingers flying over the terminal. No, we're rescuers. And we're leaving. All of us. Right now. The cages began to unlock. One after another. The prisoners emerged slowly, disbelieving. Some could barely walk, weakened by confinement and experimentation. Others were missing limbs, eyes, or bearing scars that told tales of systematic horror. There were 42 of them, 42 souls who'd been reduced to research subjects. Ryan felt rage building in his chest, cold and focused. The consortium would answer for this, one way or another. Can you all move? Ryan asked. We need to get to the docking bay quickly. A tall insectoid being clicked its mandibles. Some of us are too weak. We'll slow you down. Leave us, and save the others. Ryan shook his head firmly. Nobody gets left behind. Kira. Organize them into groups. Strong ones help the weak. We move together, or not at all. Kira's patterns flashed with approval as she began coordinating the prisoners. Despite their various species and communication barriers, they responded to her natural authority. The strong supported the weak, creating a ragged but mobile group. Griffin's voice crackled in Ryan's ear. We've got a problem. Security just realized someone accessed the prison level. They're mobilizing. You've got maybe 2 minutes before they lock down the facility. Then we move fast, Ryan replied. He turned to the assembled prisoners. Listen up. Security is coming. Stay close. Stay quiet. And follow my lead. If shooting starts, get behind me and keep moving toward the exit. Understood? 42 pairs of eyes, representing a dozen different species, stared at him. The group moved as quickly as the weakest could manage. Ryan took point, his rifle ready. Kira brought up the rear. Her stunner charged, and her patterns shifting to combat-ready crimson. The freed prisoners moved between them, a desperate caravan seeking freedom. They'd made it halfway to the docking bay when the alarms started screaming. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors in hellish illumination. Heavy boots thundered as security forces converged on their position. Contact front, Ryan called, dropping to one knee. The first security team rounded the corner, weapons raised. Ryan's shots were precise, targeting weapons and limbs, rather than killing. 2 guards went down immediately. The others took cover, returning fire. Keep moving, Ryan shouted to the prisoners. Don't stop, no matter what. The group surged forward while Ryan provided covering fire. Plasma bolts seared the air around him, one catching his already injured shoulder. He grunted but kept shooting, emptying his magazine into the security position. Kira reached his position, dragging him backward. Move, she commanded, her voice carrying an authority that surprised both of them. I'll cover. Her stunner fired repeatedly, the blue bolts of concentrated energy dropping guards with each hit. She'd become precise with the weapon. Her natural agility, allowing her to dodge, return fire, while maintaining accurate shots. Ryan reloaded and joined her, their combined fire forcing the security team into full retreat. They ran, the group now moving with desperate speed. Behind them, more guards mobilized. Ahead, the docking bay doors loomed. Griffin had them open, the Defiance's engines already running. Come on, Ryan urged, helping a limping prisoner up the boarding ramp. The others streamed past, flooding into the ship's cargo bay. Kira did a quick count, her patterns cycling anxiously. 38, 39, 40, she counted. Someone's missing. 2 prisoners aren't here. Ryan's heart sank. He scanned the corridor behind them and saw 2 small figures, barely adolescents, frozen in fear at a junction point. Security forces were closing from both directions. Griffin, prep for emergency departure, Ryan commanded. Kira, get these people secured. I'm going back. You can't, Kira protested. You'll never make it. Watch me, Ryan said, and he sprinted back into the facility. The The two young prisoners, members of a species Ryan didn't recognize, huddled together as the guards approached. They looked maybe 12 years old in human terms, their bodies marked with the same systematic abuse as all the others. When they saw Ryan coming, their eyes went wide with terror. Ryan skidded to a stop in front of them, putting himself between them and the approaching guards. "It's okay," he said quickly. "I'm getting you out. Hold on tight." He scooped them both up, one under each arm, and ran. The children weighed almost nothing. Malnutrition, having stolen what should have been healthy mass. They clung to him desperately as plasma fire erupted around them. A bolt caught Ryan's leg, and he stumbled. Pain lanced through his thigh, but he forced himself to keep moving. The docking bay was close. So close. The children in his arms whimpered in fear, and Ryan felt his determination crystallize into something unbreakable. "Not today," he growled. "Today, you get to go home." He burst through the docking bay doors. The Defiance waited, Kira visible at the top of the boarding ramp, her patterns blazing encouragement. Security forces poured into the bay behind him, their weapons tracking his movement. Ryan's injured leg gave out. He fell forward, twisting to take the impact himself and protect the children. They tumbled across the deck, Ryan's body absorbing the collision. The security forces raised their weapons for the killing shot. But before they could fire, something extraordinary happened. The freed prisoners, these broken, tortured souls who'd endured so much, stepped off the ship and formed a human shield between Ryan and the guards. They stood there. 40 bodies, standing between the man who'd saved them and those who would kill him. They were unarmed, injured, weak, but they stood firm. The security forces hesitated, unwilling to shoot through dozens of what the consortium still considered valuable test subjects. That moment of hesitation was all Ryan needed. "Get on the ship," he roared, hauling himself upright. Now, the prisoners retreated up the ramp, Ryan and the two children with them. Kira fired her stunner past them, dropping the lead guard. The ramp sealed shut as the Defiance's engines screamed to full power. The ship tore free from the docking clamps, Griffin pushing the engines beyond safe limits. Plasma fire impacted the hull, scarring the armor, but not penetrating. Within seconds, they'd cleared the facility's weapons range. "Jump drive charging," Griffin reported. "We'll be clear in 30 seconds. Ryan collapsed against the cargo bay wall, his injured leg stretched out before him. The two children he'd rescued clung to him, their fear slowly giving way to disbelieving relief. Around them, 42 freed prisoners stood or sat, their expressions showing the first glimpses of hope in who knew how long. Kira knelt beside Ryan, her patterns swirling with concern as she examined his injuries. "You're an idiot," she said, but her voice was gentle. "A brave, wonderful idiot." Ryan managed a pained smile. "I've been called worse." The jump drive engaged, and the Defiance leapt into faster-than-light travel, leaving Titan Prime and its horrors behind. In the cargo bay, surrounded by those he'd freed, Ryan Carter allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. One facility down, 29 to go. The children in his arms finally spoke, their translator rendering their words as a simple question. "Where are we going?" Ryan looked at Kira, then at all the freed prisoners, then back to the children. "Somewhere safe," he promised. "And then we're going to make sure no one ever has to ask that question again." In the weeks that followed, the Defiance became something more than a warship. It became a mobile sanctuary. Ryan converted the cargo bays into living quarters, cramped but functional. Griffin coordinated with sympathetic contacts in coalition space to establish safe houses where freed prisoners could begin the long process of healing and reintegration. Kira proved invaluable. She understood trauma in ways Ryan never could. She organized support groups, helped translate between species, and most importantly, showed the others that recovery was possible. Her bioluminescent patterns became a beacon of hope, their colors growing more vibrant, as she herself continued to heal. But the work was far from over. Each facility they hit brought new challenges. Some had heavier security than anticipated. Others were deeply hidden, requiring extensive reconnaissance. And always, the consortium responded with increasing aggression. The corporate giant had put a massive bounty on Ryan's head. 50 million credits, dead or alive. Mercenaries and bounty hunters across the galaxy suddenly took an interest in a single small corvette operating in the outer sectors. Ryan didn't care. Every facility they liberated, every prisoner they freed, was another blow against the consortium's evil. The evidence they gathered grew into an irrefutable mountain of proof. Thousands of hours of surveillance footage, medical records detailing systematic torture disguised as research, financial documents showing the profits made from suffering. Commander Hayes was working her own angle, quietly building support within Coalition Naval Command. The evidence Ryan provided was being shared with sympathetic admirals, independent journalists, and even rival corporations who saw an opportunity to weaken the consortium's market dominance. The sixth facility they hit was on a frozen moon orbiting a dead star. The prisoners there had been subjected to cold resistance testing, their bodies pushed to the limits of thermal endurance. Ryan extracted 17 survivors, all suffering from severe frostbite and hypothermia. The ninth facility held prisoners being tested for their regenerative capabilities. The researchers had systematically injured them, documenting healing rates. The scars were psychological as much as physical, the prisoners flinching at any sudden movement. The 14th facility was different. When Ryan and Kira breached it, they found it had been evacuated. The consortium was learning, adapting. They were moving prisoners to more secure locations, consolidating their operations to make them harder to hit. Griffin tracked the movement of corporate ships, analyzing patterns and predicting where the prisoners were being relocated. It led them to a massive station deep in consortium-controlled space, a fortress designed to be impregnable, holding potentially hundreds of prisoners from all their scattered facilities. It was a trap, and they all knew it. The consortium wanted Ryan to attempt a rescue. They'd be waiting with overwhelming force, ready to end his crusade once and for all. Ryan studied the tactical projections. The odds were absurd. Even if they somehow managed to infiltrate the station, extraction would be nearly impossible. They'd be fighting thousands of guards, automated defense systems, and likely consortium warships waiting in orbit. So we don't do it, Kira said quietly, standing beside him in the briefing room. We've saved over 200 people, Ryan. That's 200 lives that wouldn't have been saved if you'd done nothing. That's enough. We can stop here. Ryan looked at the station schematic. Somewhere inside, hundreds of prisoners waited, suffering. They'd been moved there because of his actions, concentrated into one location to make them easier to guard. If he stopped now, they'd remain in captivity forever. The consortium would learn from their mistakes and ensure no one could ever threaten their operations again. I can't stop, he said finally. Not while there are still people in those cells. Not while the consortium still operates with impunity. Then you'll die, Kira said bluntly. And all this, everything we've accomplished, will end. Maybe, Ryan acknowledged. Or maybe we figure out how to beat them anyway. We've done impossible things before. This is different. This is suicide. Ryan turned to face her fully. When I found you in that cage, when you begged me not to hurt you, I made a choice. I chose to be the kind of person who acts when action is needed. I can't unmake that choice, Kira. I won't. Those prisoners deserve the same chance you got. Kira's patterns cycled rapidly, emotions warring across her features. Finally, she sighed. Then we'd better have a brilliant plan. Because a stupid one will just get us all killed faster. Over the next week, they prepared. Ryan called in every favor he had, contacted every sympathetic source, and exhausted every resource. Slowly, reluctantly, a plan took shape. It was risky, required perfect timing, and depended on factors largely outside their control. In other words, it was the best they could do. Commander Hayes provided the final piece. She couldn't authorize official action, but she could ensure that a coalition patrol happened to be in the area when Ryan made his move. Just close enough to respond if things went sideways. Just positioned right to provide covering fire if needed. It wasn't much, but it was something. And sometimes, something was enough. The day of the assault arrived. The Defiance approached the massive consortium station, its weapons powered down to appear non-threatening. Ryan had assembled a team from the freed prisoners. Volunteers who wanted to help rescue others still in captivity. They weren't soldiers, but they had motivation that matched training in certain circumstances. Kira led the team, her pattern set to determined orange. She'd come so far from the terrified prisoner he'd found months ago. Now, she moved with confidence and purpose, a leader in her own right. Griffin monitored all communication channels, ready to coordinate with Commander Hayes's patrol if needed. The AI had calculated success odds at approximately 7%. Those were terrible odds. Ryan had faced worse and survived, but never with so many lives depending on him. Never with stakes this high. The station loomed ahead, a massive construct of metal and malice. Somewhere inside, hundreds of prisoners waited. Some still hoped for rescue. Others had given up, resigned to their fate. Ryan was determined to prove that hope wasn't foolish. All teams, ready, he commanded. Remember, we get in fast, hit the prison levels, and extract as many as we can before they organize a response. Stick to the plan, watch each other's backs, and if I give the order to retreat, you retreat. No arguments. Clear? A chorus of acknowledgments came back. Ryan took a deep breath. He thought about that first station, about finding Kira in that cage, about the simple plea that had changed everything. Please don't hurt me. Those words had broken his heart and remade it into something harder. Something that refused to accept injustice. Something that fought back against evil, no matter the cost. Griffin, Ryan said quietly. If this goes wrong, if I don't make it out, you make sure everyone knows. You publish everything we've gathered. Every file, every video, every piece of evidence. You burn the consortium down, even if I can't. Already set up, the AI replied. But I'd prefer we all survive, to see it happen. Me too, Ryan admitted. All right, people. Let's go save some lives. The Defiance moved toward the station's docking bay, and Ryan Carter prepared to face the greatest challenge of his life. He didn't know if he'd survive. He didn't know if his plan would work, but he knew with absolute certainty that he'd try. Because that's what humans did. When faced with evil, they fought. When confronted with injustice, they stood firm. And when someone asked them for help, they answered, no matter the cost. The final battle was about to begin. The consortium station's docking bay was enormous, designed to accommodate massive cargo vessels. The Defiance looked like a child's toy in comparison, dwarfed by the industrial scale of corporate infrastructure. Ryan guided the ship to the designated landing platform, his hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Transmit the authorization codes, he ordered. Griffin complied, sending the falsified credentials they'd stolen from the consortium's logistics network. For a long moment, nothing happened. Ryan's hand hovered over the weapons controls, ready to fight their way out if the codes were rejected. Then the docking bay's inner airlock cycled open. Welcome, cargo vessel 779er, a synthetic voice announced. Proceed to unloading zone for inspection. They were in. Phase 1, complete. Now, came the hard part. Ryan and his team disembarked wearing stolen consortium uniforms. The disguise wouldn't hold up to close scrutiny, but it might buy them precious seconds. Kira had wrapped herself again, hiding her distinctive bioluminescence. The others, freed prisoners who'd volunteered for the assault, carried themselves with grim determination. They moved through the station's corridors with practiced efficiency. Griffin fed them directions through their comm units, guiding them away from main thoroughfares and toward service passages. The station was massive, its interior a maze of industrial sections, research labs, and administrative areas. And somewhere deep in its core, the prison levels waited. They encountered their first checkpoint at a security junction. 3 guards stood watch, checking identification badges of passing workers. Ryan's team couldn't avoid them without triggering suspicion. "Kira, your turn," Ryan whispered. She removed her wrappings and stepped forward. Her bioluminescent patterns blazed to life, cycling through that hypnotic sequence. She began to sing, and the effect was immediate. The guards' expressions glazed over, their weapons lowering as the song bypassed their conscious minds. Ryan's team moved past quickly, zip-tying the entranced guards and dragging them into a storage closet. They'd wake up eventually, but by then the rescue would be over, one way or another. They descended through the station's levels, bypassing security systems with Griffin's help and avoiding patrols through careful timing. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The clean corporate aesthetic gave way to cold functionality. Down here, appearances didn't matter. This was where the real work happened, away from prying eyes. The prison-level door stood before them, massive and imposing. Unlike the facility on Titan Prime, this one had multiple layers of security, biometric scanners, access codes, and armed guards visible through the reinforced windows. "This is where it gets loud," Ryan said. He pulled out shaped charges and began placing them on the door's hinges. "Everyone get ready. Once this door blows, we'll have minutes before the entire station mobilizes. We grab everyone we can and run for the ship." The team took positions, weapons ready. Ryan activated the charges and took cover. The explosion was precise but deafening, shearing through the hinges and sending the massive door crashing inward. Alarm klaxons immediately began wailing throughout the station. Ryan charged through the smoke, his rifle up. The guards on the other side were reeling from the blast, temporarily disoriented. His team moved with him, stunning guards before they could recover. It was over in seconds, a perfect execution of practiced tactics. The prison level was vast, far larger than any they'd encountered before. Rows upon rows of cages stretched into the distance, stacked 3 high, and extending so far Ryan couldn't see the end. Each held prisoners, and there were hundreds of them. "Sweet stars," one of Ryan's team members whispered. "How many are there?" Griffin's voice crackled in their ears. "Scanning now. I'm detecting approximately 600 life signs in the prison level. That's," the AI paused, "far more than anticipated." Ryan felt his stomach clench. 600. They'd prepared to extract maybe 200, at most. 600 prisoners. Many likely unable to walk, needing to be evacuated through a station that was now on full alert. It was impossible. He looked at Kira, saw his own doubt reflected in her shifting patterns. Then he remembered why they'd come. Remembered every freed prisoner who'd thanked him with tears in their eyes. Remembered the 2 children who'd clung to him, asking where they were going. "We take them all," Ryan said firmly. "Griffin, override every cage lock on this level. Open everything. Kira, organize groups like before. Everyone who can walk helps someone who can't." "Ryan," his AI protested, "the numbers don't work. We can't extract 600 people before security overwhelms us. Then we'll have to make the numbers work," Ryan replied. "Open the cages. Now." The locks disengaged en masse, a symphony of clicking mechanisms. The prisoners emerged slowly, disbelief warring with desperate hope on their faces. Some were species Ryan recognized from previous rescues. Others were completely alien, their biology strange and wonderful. All bore the marks of systematic abuse. Kira moved among them, her patterns bright and reassuring. Her presence, another survivor, gave them courage. They began organizing themselves, the stronger supporting the weaker, creating a massive exodus from their cages. The first wave of consortium security forces hit 3 minutes later. They poured through the blown doorway in tactical formation, weapons hot and ready. Ryan's team met them with concentrated fire, creating a defensive line between the guards and the prisoners. "Keep moving," Ryan shouted to the evacuating prisoners. "Don't stop. Get to the docking bay." But there were so many of them. And they moved so slowly. The weakest could barely walk. Some had to be carried. The exodus became a desperate crawl toward freedom, each second bringing more security forces into the fight. Ryan burned through ammunition at an alarming rate. His rifle overheated, and he switched to his sidearm. Beside him, his volunteers fought with the fury of those who'd endured too much and refused to endure more. They weren't trained soldiers, but their determination made up for their lack of technique. Kira fought near the rear of the prisoner column, protecting the most vulnerable. Her stunner had long since depleted its charge, so she'd taken a guard's plasma rifle. She wielded it with surprising competence. The training Ryan had given her combined with natural agility, creating a formidable combatant. Then the tactical situation deteriorated further. Heavy blast doors began closing throughout the station, automated security protocols sealing off sections. Griffin tried to override them, but the consortium's security AI was fighting back, blocking his access. "Ryan, we're being locked in," Griffin warned. "Those doors seal. We're trapped." Ryan made a split-second decision. "Team, fall back to the prisoner column. We're moving together." "Griffin, chart us a route to the docking bay that's still open." "There isn't one," the AI replied. "Every direct route is sealed or closing." "But," Griffin paused, "there's a maintenance shaft network that connects the levels. It's not designed for personnel transport, but it might work." "Where's the access point?" 200 meters from your position, through the research labs." Ryan assessed quickly. The prisoner column stretched nearly half a kilometer, moving at an agonizing pace. Unless, he thought, his eyes scanning the station's infrastructure above them. The cargo transport system. Those tracks ran throughout the station, designed to move heavy loads. If they could commandeer the transport cars, Griffin, can you hack the cargo transport system? Get us several cars? Already working on it. The AI responded. I've got control of 6 heavy load transports. Bringing them to your position. Now. The sound of approaching machinery rumbled through the prison level. 6 massive flatbed cars, designed to carry tons of cargo, rolled along the overhead tracks toward them. They weren't comfortable or safe, but they were fast and could hold far more prisoners than Ryan had dared hope. Everyone on the cars, Ryan commanded. Pack tight. We're getting out of here. The prisoners scrambled aboard, helping each other up. They filled the transports beyond capacity, clinging to any handhold they could find. It was dangerous and desperate, but it was movement. It was progress. Ryan and his team provided covering fire as the last prisoners boarded. Security forces pressed harder, realizing their prisoners were escaping. Plasma bolts filled the air, the concentrated fire forcing Ryan's team into full retreat. Go! 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 Ryan shouted, jumping onto the last transport car as it began moving. Kira pulled him aboard fully, just as a plasma bolt seared past where he'd been standing. The transports accelerated along their tracks, carrying the massive column of freed prisoners through the station's industrial sections. Security forces pursued, firing from catwalks and platforms, but the transports were moving too fast, putting distance between hunters and prey. Griffin guided them through a maze of passages, avoiding sealed sections and active security forces. The route was circuitous, winding through cargo bays and maintenance areas, but it was getting them closer to the docking bay, closer to the Defiance, closer to freedom. Then disaster struck. A consortium gunship appeared ahead, hovering in their path. Its weapons systems locked onto the lead transport, preparing to fire. At this range, with the prisoners so tightly packed, a single volley would be a massacre. Kira acted without hesitation. She stood on the transport's edge, her patterns blazing with all the light she could generate. She sang, her voice projecting with desperate intensity. The sound echoed through the vast industrial space, reaching toward the gunship. The pilot faltered, his hands moving sluggishly on the controls. It wasn't enough to take over completely. The gunship's systems offered some protection, but it was enough to slow him, enough to throw off his aim. Ryan used the opening. He fired his remaining magazine at the gunship's exposed thruster ports, the shots precise and devastating. The small craft lurched, its stabilization compromised. It spun out of control, crashing into a support beam and exploding in a fireball. The transports rolled past the wreckage, the heat washing over the huddled prisoners. They were so close now. The docking bay was just ahead. Ryan could see the Defiance waiting, its boarding ramps extended, and engines hot. But between them and salvation stood the station's entire remaining security force. Easily 200 guards in full tactical gear, supported by automated turrets and barricades. They'd had time to prepare a killing field, and Ryan's ragtag rescue force was heading straight into it. There was no way around. No clever trick to bypass them. Just a straight fight against overwhelming odds. Ryan checked his ammunition. Nearly empty. He looked at his team, saw the same calculation in their eyes. They were spent, exhausted, running on pure determination. The transports would deliver them right into that security force in 30 seconds. It would be a slaughter. Unless someone bought them time. Ryan jumped from the moving transport, hitting the deck hard and rolling. Kira screamed his name, but he was already moving, sprinting toward a weapons locker he'd spotted on the wall. He tore it open, grabbing the heavy plasma cannon inside. The weapon was designed for defensive emplacements, far too large for one person to wield effectively. Ryan didn't care. He hefted it, feeling the massive weight strain his already injured body. He took position behind a support column that offered minimal cover. "Griffin," he said quietly. "When those transports reach the docking bay, you get them loaded and jump out immediately. Don't wait for me." "Ryan, no," the AI protested. "We can find another way." "There is no other way," Ryan replied. "And we both know it. This is what I signed up for when I decided to fight back. Some things are worth dying for." He opened fire. The plasma cannon roared, each shot a miniature sun that illuminated the vast space. Ryan swept the weapon across the security force, forcing them into cover. Turrets exploded under the concentrated fire. Barricades melted. Guards scattered, their prepared positions turned into death traps. The transports rolled past, the prisoners staring at Ryan as they went. He didn't look at them, focusing entirely on maintaining, suppressing fire. Every second he kept the security force's attention was another second for the prisoners to escape. His shoulder burned where the earlier wound had reopened. His leg throbbed with each heartbeat. The plasma cannon's heat sinks were failing, the weapon cycling slower with each shot. But Ryan kept firing, pouring everything he had into this final stand. Kira's voice filled his calm. "Ryan, please. Come on. You can make it if you run now." He wanted to. Every survival instinct screamed at him to drop the cannon and sprint for the ship. But the security forces were already regrouping, preparing to charge the docking bay. If Ryan stopped firing even for a moment, they'd overwhelm the loading prisoners. "You know I can't do that," he said softly. Her response was a sound that the translator couldn't process, something between a sob and a war cry. Then her patterns blazed through the docking bay's windows, visible even at this distance, orange and red and furious purple, the colors of someone refusing to accept the unacceptable. The last prisoners boarded the Defiance. The ramps retracted. Ryan allowed himself a small smile. 600 souls. Now safe. 200 plus earlier rescues. Over 800 lives saved because one man had chosen to act when action was needed. Not a bad legacy, he thought. The plasma cannon finally overheated completely, its systems shutting down to prevent catastrophic failure. Ryan dropped the useless weapon and drew his combat knife. It was a pathetic defense against plasma rifles and tactical armor, But it was all he had left. The security forces closed in, their formation tightening like a noose. Ryan backed against the support column, knife ready. He'd take as many as he could with him. He'd make them remember that some fights were worth fighting, even when you couldn't win. Then the entire station shook. A massive impact resonated through the structure, followed by secondary explosions. Ryan's tactical display lit up with new contacts. Coalition, warships. Not just Commander Hayes's patrol, but an entire battle group. And at their head, broadcasting on all frequencies, Commander Hayes herself. This is Coalition Naval Task Force 7. The Vaxian Consortium facility is hereby under military quarantine. All personnel stand down immediately or face destruction. The security forces hesitated, looking between Ryan and the arrival of overwhelming military force. Their orders had been to protect corporate assets. Those orders hadn't anticipated fighting an actual fleet. The Defiance lifted off, clearing the docking bay with Griffin's expert piloting. But instead of jumping away, it circled back, positioning itself between Ryan and the security forces. Weapons hot and targeting systems locked. "We're not leaving without him," Kira's voice broadcast across all channels. "Anyone who wants to stop us goes through us first." Coalition dropships began landing throughout the station, disgorging Marines in full combat armor. The security forces, realizing they were now hopelessly outgunned, began surrendering. Within minutes, the situation had completely reversed. Ryan slid down the support column, exhaustion and pain finally overwhelming him. He'd done it, against all odds, with luck and determination and the help of people who'd become more than allies, more than friends. He'd actually done it. Commander Hayes herself came to collect him, her expression mixing exasperation with grudging respect. "You are the most frustrating, insubordinate, reckless officer I've ever had the misfortune to command," she said. Then she smiled. "And the bravest. Medical teams are evacuating all prisoners to coalition vessels. We've seized every piece of evidence in this facility. The consortium is done." "What changed?" Ryan asked. "Last we spoke, you said authorization would take months." Hayes helped him to his feet. "Turns out, when you present 800 freed prisoners to Naval Command, all giving testimony about systematic torture and illegal experimentation, things move faster. Your evidence made it impossible for anyone to look away. The admirals who were bought by the consortium found themselves suddenly outvoted by those who actually care about justice." "So it's over," Ryan said, hardly daring to believe it. "The rescue operation is over," Hayes corrected. "The legal battles are just beginning." "But yes, Ryan, you've won. The consortium's research programs are being shut down. Their executives are facing criminal charges. And every prisoner they ever took is being repatriated or given asylum in coalition space." Ryan felt tears on his face and didn't bother wiping them away. 800 lives. 800 people who'd get to go home. Who'd get to heal. Who'd get to live without fear. It had cost him everything. His career, his health, his future prospects. And he'd do it again in a heartbeat. Kira found him in the medical bay an hour later. Coalition doctors had patched his wounds and pumped him full of enough painkillers that he felt pleasantly detached from his battered body. She sat beside his bed, her patterns cycling through relieved blue. "You almost died," she said quietly. "You were going to die, but I didn't," Ryan replied. "Thanks to you. Thanks to all of you. Kira, what you did, keeping that gunship off us, refusing to leave. You saved everyone." Her patterns shifted to embarrassed pink. "I learned from the best. You taught me that some things are worth fighting for. That sometimes, the only right choice is the hard one." Ryan took her hand gently. "What will you do now? With the consortium shut down, with you free, what's next for you?" Kira's patterns brightened to determined orange. "I'm going to find my people, the ones who were taken from my world, and if they're still alive, I'm going to bring them home. Then, She paused. I'm going to make sure this never happens again. That no one else has to beg someone not to hurt them. Sounds like you'll need a ship, Ryan observed. Maybe a crew. Someone with experience in impossible rescues. Are you volunteering? Kira asked, her patterns shifting to amused green. If you'll have me, Ryan replied. I'm pretty much unemployable, in legitimate circles now. Might as well make a career out of doing the right thing. Kira's laugh was the most beautiful sound Ryan had ever heard. Pure joy, uncomplicated by fear or pain. The laugh of someone who'd survived horror and chosen hope anyway. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching through the medical bay's viewport as coalition ships processed the freed prisoners. Each one represented a story of suffering, transformed into survival. Each one proved that evil could be fought, that injustice could be challenged, and that sometimes, against all odds, the good guys actually won. The galaxy was far from perfect. There were still tyrants and slavers, corrupt corporations, and systematic abuses. But there were also people like Ryan Carter and Kira. People who heard cries for help and answered. People who saw wrong and refused to ignore it. And sometimes, that was enough to change everything. Months later, the trial concluded. The Vaxian Consortium was found guilty of crimes against sapient life, illegal experimentation, and violations of dozens of Galactic Council laws. The corporation was dissolved, its assets seized and distributed as reparations to victims. Executives were sentenced to decades in actual prisons. Not the comfortable research stations they'd run. The evidence Ryan had gathered became public record. Journalists across the galaxy published stories about the rescued prisoners, about systematic abuse disguised as science, about profit placed above basic morality. The outrage was universal and overwhelming. New laws were passed. Research oversight became mandatory. Corporate immunity was sharply curtailed. Whistleblower protections were strengthened. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Real, meaningful change born from one man's refusal to look away from suffering. Ryan Carter received dozens of medals he didn't want, and dozens of job offers he politely declined. He had more important work to do. The Defiance, now repaired and upgraded with coalition resources, became the flagship of an informal rescue organization. Kira served as co-captain, her experiences and insights invaluable. They hunted down the remaining scattered facilities that had somehow escaped the initial crackdown. They investigated reports of illegal research throughout the outer sectors. They became legends, whispered about in corporate boardrooms, and celebrated in freed prisoner communities. But Ryan never forgot where it started. That first station. That first cage. The moment when a desperate prisoner had whispered 4 words that changed his life forever. Please don't hurt me. Those words haunted him in the best way. They reminded him why he fought, why he risked everything, why comfort and safety paled in comparison to doing what was right. One evening, as the Defiance drifted through peaceful space, Ryan found himself on the observation deck. Kira joined him, her patterns calm and content. They just repatriated another group of rescued prisoners to their homeworlds. Good work done. Lives saved. Do you ever regret it? Kira asked suddenly. Everything you gave up, your career, your normal life. You could have walked away after rescuing me. Ryan considered the question seriously. He thought about his old life. The routine missions, the bureaucracy, the safety of following orders and never questioning them. Then he thought about the 800 lives they'd saved. The families reunited. The suffering ended. Never, he said finally. Some choices aren't really choices at all. They're just discovering what kind of person you already are. Kira's patterns shifted to affectionate violet. You're a good person, Ryan Carter. A genuinely good person in a galaxy that doesn't always reward goodness. I'm just someone who tried to help, Ryan replied. Anyone could have done what I did, but they didn't. Kira pointed out. You did. That's what makes you special. They stood together, watching the stars, two unlikely heroes who'd found purpose in fighting impossible odds. The galaxy was vast and often cruel, but it was also full of people worth saving, stories worth telling, battles worth fighting, and sometimes, all it took to start changing everything was one person hearing a plea for help and choosing to answer. One person deciding that compassion mattered more than caution. One person whose heart shattered at hearing 4 simple words and then reformed stronger than before. The Defiance's engines hummed softly, ready to take them wherever they were needed next. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, someone else was suffering. Someone else needed help. Ryan, Carter, and Kira would find them. They would answer the call. Because that's what heroes did. Not because it was easy or safe or profitable, but because it was right. And in the end, what else mattered?